This is the Horse Radio Network.
Would you take a virtual riding lesson? We're talking to a top dressage trainer who's expanding her training business thanks to technology and the internet. This week, we'll dissect the biggest WTF moment at the Kentucky Derby, give Piggy the praise she deserves, and do riders actually get to keep the prize money when they win? Thanks for tuning in. From Heels Down Mag, a podcast where horse pros chat about what's happening in the horse world over drinks. Welcome to Happy Hour. I'm Justine Griffin.
I'm Ellie Woznicka.
I'm Jessica Payne, and welcome to episode 48 of Heels Down Happy Hour.
How's it going, Jess?
Good. How's it going?
Have you nursed your Kentucky hangover yet?
Oh, yes. Just as we're getting on the way to go to Jersey. So we have nonstop the last couple weeks.
Oh, my goodness. But we didn't get to talk until we talked before Doug's finish in Kentucky, and holy moly, what a great weekend for you guys.
It was so awesome. It was literally riding a high for 2 weeks, honestly, because it was great. The horses finished great. All of the, our horse finished great. Doug finished great and couldn't have been happier. I mean, especially it's a bit emotional since, I guess, last year, almost a year since April, he had surgery on his stifle. So, we never knew if he was going to make it back to the level or not. And he looks sound and he looks happy. And little spoiler alert, the team vets did look at him for the Pan Am. So that's always exciting. So
wow.
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that on the air, but don't tell anybody, guys.
That's really exciting.
But it's exciting and he looks great. And so, honestly, that's some of the best news as well, because, you just never know after those things.
Oh, totally. No, it was really exciting to watch. Like you said, Doug and Quinn, both of them looked amazing and super strong on cross country. It was great.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. So a lot of fun and got to meet a bunch of people. So it was fun. So this episode is brought to you by SmartPak. Your love for your senior horse never ends. Discover how you can give him the best care today by visiting SmartPak's Senior Horse Resource Center. Visit smartpakequine.com to learn more. So, Justine, I hear you have a fantastic kind of summer drink for us.
I do. And this one is from Jemmy, who is our Horse Radio Network producer, who's on the show most of the time with us. And she's really great at just handling our shenanigans and making sure we stay on track. And
all the behind the scenes stuff.
Right. And she gives really great drink recommendations. So this drink is called a sangarita, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's sangria and a margarita cocktail mixed together. So this recipe calls for a strawberry version. So basically you need pureed fresh strawberries, tequila, orange liqueur, a lime or lime juice, a little agave nectar or simple syrup. And so that sounds pretty sweet, right? But so they suggest adding wine like you would for sangria. And this recipe calls for rosé, which I'm become obsessed with because I'm very basic right now. I'm just really into rosé. And so you add the rosé to all of these other ingredients, add some sliced strawberries, some lime wheels, some orange peels to soak in the sangria and give it more flavor. And then it's ready to go. Doesn't that sound delicious?
Yeah. Yes. I wish I'd had this for Cinco de Mayo. That would have been amazing.
Oh, it's perfect for Cinco de Mayo. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so good. So speaking of we came off Rolex and all that, but did you watch the Kentucky Derby?
I did. And holy crap, what a Kentucky Derby, right? Very contentious.
I'm not going to lie. So we watched it. We were at a Grand Prix in Aiken. So Doug jumped in the Grand Prix and then we went up to the tent and they had it playing. So we all watched the Kentucky Derby and, then they turned it off and we all went home, had to pack up. We didn't know for an hour or so that maximum security didn't win.
Oh my goodness. Really? Wow.
Yeah. So we were wait, what? What do you mean he didn't win? Somebody called us, I think Courtney or somebody, and was yeah, did you hear all the craziness? And I was no, had no idea about any of this. So yeah, long story short, guess what? Found out that he didn't win.
And so I thought Ellie made a really great point in the Facebook group this week because everyone has an opinion. It's been all over social media. There's been plenty of articles to read. And it was hard to watch them take the title away from Maximum Security, because clearly he was the fastest horse of the day, right? Like there was no denying that any other horse was close to touching him. But I thought it was smart that they made a conservative move like that, given everything that's happened at Santa Anita and racehorse deaths, that they went by the rule book. And even though the horses didn't have a fall or didn't collide, but you could see where their legs kind of, meshed together with that spook as he moved over in their lane. I mean, it just seemed like the right safety call to make, right?
No, 100%. Like, I think that absolutely needed to happen. And like, I agree with the stewards that they made the right call and that they needed to do it, because it could have been a horrible, horrible situation. And so I think in the end, everybody was in an uproar about everything, but at the end of the day, I think it was the right call, and it is a shame that he was the fastest horse, but maybe there'll be a little bit more. I mean, they say he's spooked or whatever else. So I still think you have to take, what it was.
Exactly. It is what it is. It was technically a disqualification. I think it was the right move for the sport, the right move for the horses. The horses should come first. Absolutely. So
speaking of wins, oh my gosh, Piggy French winning badminton, unbelievable. That was the craziest thing to watch. Did you watch it?
I did. It was very cool. And I'm not going to lie, I was an Oliver fan going into it. Like when he had that record-breaking dressage performance. I mean, I was like amazed that he could come back after Kentucky with 2 other horses, fly halfway across the world and go and do that. But it was like a nail-biting finish, right? Holy moly.
I mean, that's the thing is I can't believe, honestly, after cross country and he got the horse through everything else, I was like, he's going to win. Like, he's going to win. And then to have just that one, and it was only a 0.3 of a second of time is what got him. And I'm like, oh, that's so, so painful. But in the end of the day, like, I'm so happy for Piggy because she completely deserved it. And did you know she's done 25 attempts at the level?
That's crazy.
So this was her 25th attempt. She had 24 attempts that she didn't win, and she finally won at the 5-star level. So good for her. I mean,
absolutely.
She had a little son. Like she said that when she was in the interview, I listened to her interview, and she was amazing. And she had her little 3-year-old son, and she's like, he doesn't even know I won. Like, he wants the tractors. She's like, hopefully one day that he'll do this. But basically it was really funny. She's like, it's just kind of a common horse, her little mare. And she's like, she basically isn't good 362 days of the year, but she shines at the biggest events. And I think that's so cool that like she stuck with it, and she's kind of a difficult horse at home, but then gets the big shows, and she deserved that win more than anybody.
Absolutely. It was super cool to watch her win.
Yeah. And then not on wins, but what's your news of the week? Because you have something completely different.
Yeah. So I found this story in Elle, which is a fashion magazine, and not something we would normally use for news on this show. But the headline here is Polo Ralph Lauren's latest campaign celebrates Black equestrians. And so I was intrigued. I was like, this is cool. And the images are all of Black riders who play polo. And it's really kind of turning the image of what you think of polo on its head. It's people dressed in their Sunday best, drinking champagne or mimosas, watching the polo match. And it's just really cool. I thought it was a really neat campaign for Ralph Lauren.
I thought they did a great job.
Me too. And I think it's a conversation that we need to be having more. I mean, it's 2019. Clearly not only white girls ride horses. You know what I mean?
No.
So it was really neat. And the photos are really beautiful. So we'll definitely share this in the show notes. And we'll be curious to see what you guys think about it. And if you want to tune in for more news and commentary, you should really subscribe to the Heels Down Brief. It's our daily email newsletter. We do all kinds of super fun stuff. This week, we've been celebrating the Temecula National Horse Show, which is out in California, which I've learned a lot about, by the way, because showing on the West Coast seems a lot different than the East Coast. And not only is that horse show actually on a racetrack, so you get to see the jockeys warming up the horses in the morning, but they're also in the middle of California's wine country. So what's a better excuse to go and see a winery after your horse show? So you should sign up for the Heels Down Brief at bit.ly/hdbrief.
So you guys remember I actually did the review of the Cavalli box, winter box, and I got a lot of cool stuff. And this time, Ellie got to do the summer box. So Ellie, tell us a little bit about it.
So I was super excited because I usually just get normal Amazon boxes, and this was like so pretty even on the outside. So I was super excited. And I got some of the Sport Essential fly spray, a best brush forward like brush cleaning kit, which I think is so important because a lot of people don't clean their grooming brushes. The T-Tech t-shirt, and it says strong is the new pretty, which I think is really important because we should be promoting, healthy and muscular riders, not necessarily just tall and skinny. Kicking On, a novel by Lori Burgle, a heated horse reusable cooling towel, really neat foot huggy boot socks, and unadorned equine apothecary braiding spray, which, the braiding spray I thought was really cool because I've always just used like that. I can't remember the brand name, but like the sticky spray. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
And it just gets really annoying. But this stuff like smelt really good, and it like got all the flyaways and stuff, and it was really nice. I mean, I don't braid my own horses for shows because I have like terrible OCD, so it takes me like 4 hours. But I did braid my Western horse just for, training braids and stuff. And this just did such a nice job. Like it looked so good. I also got really neat stickers, which I'm excited about because I'm a child inside. So there are 5 to 7 items usually in the box, and it's delivered 4 times a year, as we know, because Jess got the winter box. The quarterly membership is $54.95, and the annual is $52.50. If you guys are interested, you can get a 15% listeners discount with promo code HEELSDOWN, all one word in caps. Visit cavalliclub.com to order.
All right, everybody. So I'm really excited to introduce our guest on the show today. We have Aless Jordan Gunderson, who is a Grand Prix dressage rider and trainer based in Wellington, Florida. She competed at the 2018 World Equestrian Games in Tryon and was the first ever athlete to represent the Philippines at the FEI Dressage World Cup final. In addition to teaching dressage riders, she also works with show jumpers and is part of Kent Farrington's team. And Aless is a model. Hey, Aless, thanks for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. You guys are taking my podcast virginity. It's my first time.
Oh my goodness.
Excellent. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thanks.
So, Aless, we've talked to you several times through the magazine, but we're really excited to have you on the podcast.
I feel like I'm part of the family.
And I heard you had some news to share with us that you are launching an online training service.
Yeah.
And I wanted to learn more about that. We've heard a little bit about this. It's becoming like a thing that trainers are experimenting with. Like, Lainey Ashker just started a online, like through an app on your phone, like virtual training. So can you tell me more about your service and why you wanted to get into this?
Okay. So it kind of all stemmed from what I was going through when I was growing up. I grew up, if you guys don't know, which you all should if you read the Heels Down magazine, I grew up in Malaysia where we didn't really have access to a whole lot of trainers or, facilities or even being able to travel anywhere to compete. So I was always stuck by myself going around the arena. So I thought to myself, there's got to be some other girls that are dealing with this problem who are just as passionate about horses and riding and want to get better. So what can I do to help them? So this is kind of where the idea was born, where I could reach out to these girls or guys or horse lovers basically and be able to help them from the comfort of their own arena, their own home, on their own horse without having to charge a huge training fee or without them having to pay for me to fly out there or without them having to trailer. So really it's basically a little better than reading a book or watching a video, and it's a lot more individualized. So you feel like you really are working with me. Like I was right there in your arena, right there in your ear, basically.
So I have a question because, I have several questions, but so if you wanted to get to be part of this, like how would somebody, go about, I know there's like fill out a questionnaire and stuff like that, but tell us a little bit about like, if I wanted to have a lesson with you virtually, like what would be the steps basically?
So you go on my website, there's a link to my online store. And actually right now until May 21st, we have a pre-launch special. So you can get it at an even cheaper price.
Oh, even better.
And you basically purchase a session with me, and what you receive when you initially buy it is a questionnaire about your horse, your goals, and then there's also instructions on the best way to capture a video. So that's the key thing here is you're capturing a video of yourself riding. And for the introductory would be there's instructions on what you should show and kind of examples of things you should show. And then they send that to me, and within 2 to 3 days, they get back from me an individualized, completely personalized training package that includes notes from me about their ride. And it has normally about 3 to 5 exercises completely tailored to their horse and their riding, as well as a sound bite where I record basically me watching their ride and every single one of my comments. So it's a live recording. It's very live. As I accidentally did one when I had the cold, so I had to apologize for that one.
No.
But, it's live comments, and, we'll go through the ride and I'll say, okay, let's pause here and back up a little bit. Now let's rewatch that. So it's really like I was sitting with the rider and going through their ride with them, essentially.
Interesting. So I have a question related to that, because do you notice that your training style, obviously you teach lessons in person all the time. Is it different when you're looking at something on a screen and then the rider you're coaching is looking at it on a screen? Like, is your technique different? Are you looking for things differently or explaining things differently, knowing that you're not having that face-to-face connection?
Yeah, it's definitely different because obviously when I'm standing in the arena with the person riding, I'm able to say things to the rider and they can do it right away. And so they can react basically when I say something to them. With the online training, when it's a video, I really try to take my time to explain why we do things. And that's why I really emphasize that we rewatch it. We rewind, go back and watch, okay, do we see why this happened here? So I would say it's very, very broken down, the training, but I think that's what makes it so great because you can watch your video with the sound clips, with your homework package over and over again to truly understand your ride, which maybe you don't actually get quite as well when you're riding live with me. Because a lot of times I'll find students will do, what I say right in that moment, but then the next day they won't actually remember why they did it because they're just so used to hearing me. So I actually think it's a really great way for someone to break down their riding and really get to know what they're doing.
I have a question related to that. So is this like a one-time, virtual lesson, or is it like a subscription thing where you work with you for a month or so?
Oh, so definitely. So we officially launch on May 21st, and definitely I encourage riders to stick with it with me. So I actually do have a few riders that started with the pre-launch that are already signed up to continue, and some of them are doing bi-weekly, some of them are doing monthly, and it's really a great way for riders to check in on their progress. Especially, for example, I have one rider that is in South Africa, which is like crazy
That's super cool.
And to teach someone in South Africa, she really wants help in the show ring. So she will touch base with me before she goes to compete to get some help kind of prior going into the ring. And then we'll get together again after she competes and go through the test. And she'll actually send me all of her test rides and we'll go through those. So it's really what the riders want to make it for themselves. And I'll even talk about the jumpers that I help with here because it's a little different for the jumpers. I'll give them exercises to do after their first ride, and then the next ride I'll have them repeat the exercises and see how their horses are learning from it, how they're learning from it, and then we'll challenge them a little bit more. We'll do more difficult exercises, and we'll really do things that will apply to their jumping as well.
So speaking of that, like with the jumpers, how did you end up kind of getting to work with the jumpers and all that? And then kind of, what kind of got you into that? Because you were a jumper before, correct?
Yes. So I've always done both dressage and jumping as a kid. I've absolutely loved it. And then I actually focused on jumping for a little while out in California. And then due to an accident is why I focused on dressage. But I absolutely still have such a passion and love for jumping, and I love working with the jumpers, and it's really a valuable asset for jumpers to have such a strong dressage background, or they like to call it flat work because essentially it's dressage with poles or with jumps in between it.
Yeah.
but it's really an asset to them. And more jumpers today are realizing what a difference it makes to them, whether they have
how important it is.
Yeah,
how important it is.
Whether it's a young horse or even an experienced horse. A lot of my riders with Kent, for example, have horses that are completely green, 6 years old, barely can go a straight line between the jumps, all the way to horses that are doing 5-star events from Kent's horses as well as students' horses.
How did you get to start working with Kent, and how is it working with Kent and his whole team?
I love it. It's honestly such a cool job to have, and I hope I have it for a very long time.
It's pretty cool to be with one of the top riders. It's pretty awesome to be part of that team.
Yeah, I love it, and it was a really, I don't know, accidental or strange way that I got into that. Yeah, I actually was working for Tiffany Foster.
Okay.
She had a couple horses that she felt really needed some dressage, basic training to get going that really needed that extra help. So I started with a couple horses there, and she's like, "Oh, they're going really well. So can you do a couple more?" And yeah, sure. Why not? I'll do a couple more. And so that kind of grew. And then one day she asked if I'd be interested in helping Kent out. And it was actually really funny because, she was saying, it's Kent and he's got some great girls. And if you're willing to teach them, that would be great. I was like, no, that sounds amazing. And she was like, yeah, just the only thing is his horses are a little wilder than mine. Oh, I mean, yeah. What do you mean? Well, they're just not as, calm as mine. I just want you to be prepared. I was like,
oh my gosh.
You're like, at what point am I a little scared?
I grew up on X-race horses. I think we should be able to handle this. And to this day, his horses are all very quirky, but I absolutely love them, and it's what makes them the fireballs that they are, and it's such an amazing experience to be able to be part of that team.
I have a question just in terms of show jumpers and their conceptions about dressage. What are some common ideas that you run into that what are some common misconceptions you run into with show jumpers and what they think about dressage and their opinions towards it, whether positive or negative?
Well, definitely. I have to say, and I have to praise Kent for this. If not being very close with Kent before and not really knowing much about him, over the past, it's over a year now that I've worked there, that man has amazing flat. He can ride so fast in the ring and look just be so fast in the ring. But when you see him work his horse on the flat, I would be happy to send him into the dressage ring and know he's going to do well. And that is something that is so important that a lot of these younger or up and coming riders don't understand. A lot of these professionals get it. They get it. They get that dressage and flat work is so important in what makes a horse. And what a lot of these young riders or adult amateurs don't see is that behind the scene training. They don't see Kent or McLean or Beasy, before the class starts in the back of the FEI stalls in the ring doing their flat work. They don't get to see that unless you're, in those FEI stalls. So
right, absolutely.
Have to really emphasize to some young riders and some juniors and adult amateurs that this part of it, if you want to be successful in the ring, no matter what height you want to jump, it all starts with the homework at home. It all starts in between the fences.
That's a really great point, Alas. So I know you were at the World Cup finals last year. You were at the World Equestrian Games. I know you just got married. You're starting a family soon, right? Too. You've got a lot going on.
Just everything packed in a couple of years. Boom.
Oh my goodness, seriously. So what's your schedule like? Obviously, if you're going to be having a baby, you're slowing down a little bit with riding, but how do you, are you kind of charting your long-term plans for when you get back into the ring, or you're going to focus more on training, or what's next for you?
Definitely. I really hope and plan to make training a long-term thing for me. Like I said, I really hope to continue to work with Ken Farrington and his team. I love working with their riders and their horses and their whole mentality. But I also hope to keep working with, dressage riders in my own program and continue that. That's really something that I think is part of being a professional. It's part of our responsibility to share our knowledge and to create other top riders out there. So I hope that's with me for a long time. But as well as far as myself, definitely still a lot more that I want to achieve. I'm going for the triple there, World Cup finals, World Equestrian Games, and hopefully an Olympics next.
Very cool.
That's the big goal, obviously, but with, of course, having a baby in August, my summer is normally spent traveling to different shows, and we're normally in Spruce or in Europe, but this summer I will be keeping it a little calmer and staying in Wellington, making sure I have that baby here, not on a plane. And then, really after the baby is born, continuing with what I love to do and sharing that with my family. Fortunately, my husband is also a professional in the sport, so it makes life a little easier with sharing the workload, and and hopefully our son will love it just as much as we do. So that would be fun.
Aw. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was wonderful. It was great to talk to you.
Again, thank you guys for having me, and I really hope all the listeners and the Heels Down fam will try out my online coaching, and I really look forward to meeting a bunch of new people and seeing all you guys ride.
So,
Absolutely.
What's your website for people who want to read more about the coaching?
So you can go to www.lsjordan.com. So it's ELLESSE Jordan.com.
Great.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yay.
Whether you need a water solution for 1 horse in the stall, 2 in the backyard, or 40 head in the pasture, the Classic Equine by Ritchie line of waterers provides trouble-free, worry-free access to water on demand. Visit classicequinebyritchie.com for additional information. Ritchie, fresh water for life. So, guys, when we were getting ready for the special Kentucky show, we polled our Facebook group for questions on specific topics that they wanted us to tackle on air. And there was one question that came up a couple of different times, which I thought was really interesting. And I thought we should just tackle it ourselves. So the question is, what is your warm-up routine? And that goes beyond just, what you're doing with your horse to get him limber and loose and get ready to go in the show. But mentally during your warm-up, what are you doing for yourself and also for your horse? So both mentally and physically. So Jess, why don't we start with you from, the upper level perspective? What is your mentality going into the warm-up?
So right before I go, like while we're back at the barns and stuff, I try to just kind of keep my mind on the job, whether it's going cross country, whether it's show jumping, or it's going through the dressage test, of like really just taking a few minutes and making sure I know I've gone through my plan, especially like cross country at the big events, that you're like going through X, Y, and Z and plans A through F or whatever they are, for each combination. And then for the dressage, like making sure not only do I know the pattern of the test, but what I'm going to do, to prepare for those movements and everything, and really just kind of thinking about it and giving myself that time needed. And then basically just once I'm on it, like I don't like a lot of like quietness while I'm in the warm-up ring. So like I always have like my coach in there and something like that, so that if it's quiet scares me, is what I said one time. So if they're not saying anything, I'm thinking it's got to be that horrible that like they can't fix it by saying anything. So a lot of people I know want the quiet and want to figure it out themselves. Like I want to kind of be making sure that I'm doing the right thing and that they're saying, hey, look, do this, this, and this. So Jan was always great. Like she knew exactly how to warm me up. So she'd always just kind of talk through and say, hey, a little bit more this, a little bit more that. And it was little bitty things, but she was so particular about all the specifics and the details that she's great to be in the warm up with me, so that I know that like every little detail was there. So that's kind of my warm up for mainly dressage. And then for show jumping and stuff, it's just, I don't jump that many jumps. I kind of make sure that I'm, I have all the tools in my box, that I just make sure my horse is warmed up enough and that they're ready to go do their job that they've kind of been training for.
So like how many jumps? I'm always curious, like less than 10, less than 5 in your warm up?
10-ish.
Okay. Just enough where you get the feel of what you want for the course.
Yeah. And it depends on the level, right? Like, so at the upper levels, I have to do a little bit more because I start about the same height, honestly, but like they'll kind of, the upper levels, obviously I start a little bit bigger, but I start with like a medium size oxer and then get it up there. And then I end with like a tall vertical. Okay. Or like a one stride or whatever, depending on what it is. So, on some of my horses, I only need, 5, depending if it's at the lower stuff, but mainly it's usually about 10 to 12-ish.
What about you, Ellie? From, like the adult AME perspective, what are you doing when you're warming up?
Well, so my thing, and like kind of like what Jess touched on, my trainer always said growing up, if you don't know it before you go into the warm up, you're not about to learn it, So it's kind of like my thing is mostly mental. Like I get in my head and like try to psych myself out, even though, I've prepared basically, all year for sometimes one event, So I actually, a couple years ago at the USHJA Emerging Athlete Program, it was at Nationals, Daniel Stewart, who is a sports psychologist, and he does like the Olympic team and stuff. Have you guys heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, he came in and did like, I don't know, like a session, I guess you could say. And he kind of told us to come up with like a mantra for ourselves, to kind of remind ourselves like on course. And someone had something like, and he wanted like acronyms. Someone had, his example, I think, was like STAR. So like stop talking and ride, like, stuff like that. And so he gave us a night to think about it. And mine ended up being Mulan, which is move up, leg, and nipples. Because when I ride, like specifically in the jumpers, I have a horse that, covers a lot of ground, but he's a Clyde thoroughbred, so he doesn't feel like he's going very fast. So I'm always nervous. I'm like, we're not going to make it, So my habit is to, lean forward. Mm-hmm. And so the, nipples reminds me to pick my chest up, and leg on. And so anyway, that's my kind of routine, is just to, have a good laugh and just relax, because it should be fun. If it's not fun, you shouldn't be doing it. That's kind of my mentality.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. I'm never going to forget Mulan now. But,
neither is Daniel Stewart, actually. I don't think he'd ever heard someone say nipples to his face. He got real red. He was like, what in the world?
Who is this girl?
Awesome.
That's pretty funny. That's interesting. So the last horse show I went to, normally my horse is like cool as a cucumber, never really gets upset. He's just not that type of thoroughbred, but he was at my last horse show, and I was very surprised. And so it totally messed up my whole warm up, right? Because I had a horse that I wasn't prepared for, that I hadn't experienced yet. And he was like really wanting to jig, and was, I was getting ready to go into a hunter derby. It was the first class of the day. And I had this anxious horse that I just hadn't had before. And that made me anxious, right? So now my body's all tense. I'm starting to think about, should I scratch? And I had a really hard time with it. It was a long warm up, a longer warm up than I've ever really done with my horse. And I ended up adding a jumper class in the ring next door just to get him to go around quiet. You know what I mean? Like, get all your, wiggles out over here. And I do think that helped. But I think, Ellie, like you said, like, you're from a training perspective, like, you're not going to train the horse something new in the warm up before your class, right? So Jess, do you have any advice for a horse like that? Like, I was able to work through it, but and basically using the tips that you just said, Ellie, like where I just said, all right, leg on, send him forward, give him a job, and just, that's all I can do is really just ask him to go do something. But Jess, do you have tips for when the warm up is not going as planned, I guess?
I think you just have to like basically think, okay, I got to put it out of my mind that yes, because I think as soon as you start panicking and stuff, it makes it worse, right?
Sure.
So the more you think about, hey, they're not going well, I'm going to screw up, then you start to make it even worse. So as hard as it really is like mentally get yourself in the game and say, okay, look, I'm going to go put him in these jumps, put him in the dressage ring, do some of the like exercises. And maybe it's not the hardest part of it. Like, don't go maybe jump the highest, maybe just get them confident and keep them jumping. Like maybe you have to jump a couple more jumps. And for us, like if the horses are going to be a little bit hotter, a little bit like up that day, we always give ourselves 10, 15 extra minutes. And then worst case, we just hang out in the warm up, honestly. We have no problem just standing there. So like for the future, sometimes just getting on a little bit earlier so that you have the time and you don't feel rushed always works for us.
So that jumper class ended up doing the trick for me. It was way lower than the hunter or than the derby course was. So It was low, inviting jumps. He got to be like wiggly and stupid, over the first 3-4 fences. And then I was able to, then I had a horse with like his brain came back, and then I could put him to work. So I'm lucky that I got on early, that I was able to do that.
Exactly.
But
yeah, no, absolutely.
Because
I think
they don't let you ride in the, like even though I got up early and was schooling, they don't let you ride in the derby ring right before the class.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
I've had that issue with Berkeley before too, like, because I think like he feels peer pressure, right? So he gets in and he sees all these fancy horses and he thinks he has to like puff out his chest like a freaking peacock. But so what I do with him, and I can't remember who told me this, but it was like the best advice I ever got because it was really helpful even when I was, younger. But is just like, and it's hard to do in a warm-up ring, but just trotting like aimlessly, like in a really forward working trot and like doing like, egg turns on the rail and just like so they don't know where they're going. And that is like the best thing, at least for him, to get his head like out of the clouds and like back in his body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that could help.
Yeah, it's just obviously difficult to do if there's like a lot of people in a warm-up ring. But if there's like another ring, I usually try to go out there and just, draw some things in the arena.
Yeah,
totally.
If you guys haven't gotten an EIS shirt, I totally recommend. They're designed for energetic people in need of high-performance sun protection. EIS stands for energetic, innovative, and stylish. These are some of the coolest shirts ever. I honestly think they're witchcraft. It's cooler than a t-shirt, and they protect you from harmful UV rays. Check out all of EIS's new colors and styles at www.equiinstyle.com. So it's that time, Rose and Thorn. I've got a big one. Or a thorn anyway, is that it's still so muddy. And even my new pasture is all ruined now, and I'm just really bummed about it. And it's gross, and I want to ride outside, but it's a muck pit.
So your pasture was grass, but just this rain has just totally destroyed it the last couple months?
Well, I have like lots of different pastures, and I have a herd of 5, and then like the colt that I'm breaking goes out alone. So I try to rotate them around, and so I move them out of the muddy pasture and move them into like a newer grass pasture. So they were all excited, because the grass is really good there. And then, it rained for a week straight. And now my nice pasture is now just as bad as the other pasture. So that's just kind of depressing because it makes everything so much longer. The horses, my black horse looks like a Palomino. He's just that caked.
Oh, no.
And because then you get covered in dirt, like before you even get on. And I'm just like, just annoying.
Yeah, that sucks. I feel for you.
But I do have a really good Rose too. So this colt that I have right now, who is actually a half brother to my boyfriend's horse, I mounted him for the first time the other day, and he went really well. I was really, happy about it and excited. So,
aw. So
that's exciting.
You didn't get injured or anything. It was very uneventful.
I didn't. No, and that's how it should be. Like I think people get, misconceptions with, breaking horses that it's going to be, bronking. But I got on him and he was just like, oh, okay. He turned around, saw I was there, and that was it.
Aw.
Justine, do you have yours?
Sure. So my Rose is kind of a funny story. So on Saturday, Kentucky Derby Day, my mom threw my dad a surprise 60th birthday party.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it was really fun. She did a really good job. And my husband and I were like the people that were supposed to trick him into going to do something all day. And then everyone, then we brought him to the party and surprise, blah, blah, blah. So we told him, because my parents live about an hour or so north of where we live. And so my mom was like, oh, Justine's going to stop by. She was taking a riding lesson and she's just going to come by the house and say hi and we'll do dinner, like a birthday dinner. And so I show up and I'm not dressed like I just came from a riding lesson. You know what I mean? Because there used to be like hauling the horse. Yeah, exactly. That I would be like exhausted and homeless looking and sunburned and disgusting. And I wore like a cute outfit because I knew it was going to be a party, but I didn't know what to do. And so we walk in and my dad's like, is that what you wore riding? And I was wearing this like cute little, I'm into jumpsuits now. I've got this like cute little fancy jumpsuit on. And so then I had to like come up with a lie on the fly. And I was like, actually, I went to a Kentucky Derby party. And he was like, well, isn't the Kentucky Derby tonight? I'm like, Yes, but I went to it earlier because I knew we were having dinner. I had to keep like changing the lie. And so what we did to take my dad out is he's become obsessive compulsive of like my husband and I being homeowners, that he wants to come here and like fix stuff and do stuff around the house all the time. But he is like the least handy man in the universe. I mean, I love him to death, but no, he's not a handyman. So he's really into plants right now because we're getting ready to landscape our front yard. And he's like obsessed with plants. So my mom's like, you need to keep him out of the house for an hour and a half. And I'm like, holy crap, that's a long time to like look at plants or something, right? So
yeah, what am I going to tell him now?
So I'm dressed like I'm not going to a riding lesson, and we're driving to go look at plants with my dad, and he brings a pair of binoculars because the place he wants to go to is closed. And I'm like, so what are we going to do? Just stand across the street and look at the nursery?
Stare at it
with binoculars? And no, we like climbed the fence and used the binoculars to like look at all their because it's like a big farm with acres of plants. And so I'm like in this fancy jumpsuit with my dad, lying to him about what we're doing, climbing this fence with binoculars to like look at plants and stuff with him all day. But it ended up working out. He had no idea. He was so obsessed with talking about various plants that we actually surprised him.
It was like 2 hours, you mean?
Yeah. Like, and he drove us through neighborhoods and would pull into people's driveways, and like, we'd look at plants in strangers' yards and stuff.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I wish I could have seen that, like from the outside, just people on top of a fence with binoculars looking at a plant nursery.
It was very ridiculous. So then I was like taking notes to make it look serious, and I get to work on Monday and I'm like, oh yeah, I took pages and pages of notes about plants. But whatever, it worked. And we surprised him and it was fun. So, and then let's see, what's my thorn?
Was your thorn that you looked at plants for 2 hours?
That would be my thorn.
That's what I was thinking.
Just a whole lot of green.
Oh my goodness, a lot of green. I've learned all kinds of different names for plants now.
I don't have a green thumb at all, so that would definitely be my green. I mean, that would be my thorn.
Okay, so that's part of my thorn because the other part is my chickens are out of control at my house in that they keep... Okay, whoever said chickens aren't smart, like clearly never had chickens, because these damn chickens are smart. They figure stuff out so fast. Where I have them in my backyard. So they have a fenced yard with like a 12-foot fence, but then we have like a little chicken wire fence that we kind of keep them on one side of the house, and the rest of our backyard is nice. Like we landscaped it, and there's like we sit out there and enjoy it, but they keep jumping over the little chicken wire fence and eating all my plants, like eating all my decorative plants that I put in the backyard. Like I have a succulent wall and all kinds of plants and stuff. And they figured out how to get over and eat all of those things. So I clipped their wings thinking that would be enough to like keep them on their side of the yard. And nope, they still figure out how to get over to the other side of the yard. So I have to find a way to keep them enclosed.
That is amazing.
Because they're just, so then they poop on the nice side of the yard. Then my dogs eat the poop, and now they're eating my plants. And I'm like, why do I have chickens, man? Why did I do this in the first place?
You can put chicken wire like on top, like as like a roof of their area. I know they do that for like other coops, but I don't know how big of a space, you know.
I was thinking that too, but then I was thinking they could still get over it as a roof. You know what I mean? Like they could flutter on top. We got to figure something out.
We gotta figure something out. That's amazing.
Ball and chains. Do they make chicken ball and chains?
I don't know. Like hobble them, you know, like
hobble them. Yeah.
Oh, poor chickens.
No.
I know. They're funny.
So,
but you
my rose. I think my rose has got to be like we're still living on the high of how great Rolex was, and it was such a good week, and it was just a lot of fun, and I got to see my mom and dad, so that was pretty cool, and so. I don't really have I guess my thorn would be the question world what's my thorn? Maybe you have a better one.
I was going to say that your kid won't stay in the car for more than 6 hours.
That is true. But I'm actually not complaining about that because then I don't have to sit in the car for more 6 hours. So
That's true.
we got to stay home for like 2 extra days, which means we just worked for 2 extra days here teaching lessons and stuff. Poor Doug talked forever today. So, but my thorn would have to be this past week. Did you hear Roy Burke died from Charles Owen?
I did. That's so sad.
That he had done so much for our sport. Like, my husband and I are so big advocates of like wearing helmets and everything else and the safety of it. And it was just really, really sad to hear that because, you know, one, it's very sad for his family and everything else. But, you know, the sport took a big hit too because the technology and like just his innovations and everything is going to be a huge loss to us. So that's probably
absolutely.
That is really sad.
R.I.P.
So such a thing, but that would be my thorn for sure. So now it's on to mailbag, a little bit more fun stuff though.
Exactly. And we have a good question for you, Jess.
Okay.
As someone who does the upper levels. So Katie in the Facebook group asked, she has a question about the prize money and she wasn't sure where to ask. So she came to us and she wants to know.
Place.
Yeah. She wants to know. So riders, say like when they win a top, you know, a 5-star event or even a show jumping class, do they get to keep the money or how does it go to owners and syndicates? Is it split up? She wants to know, is it maybe different for each rider and owner? Or so I figured, Jess, you are the one to answer that.
I can. And, you know, I'll tell you like straight up. So, and I'm not just going to go, oh, everybody's different. So it is very much everybody's different. It is very much what is everybody's agreement with the horse owners, whether, you know, they're the owner or they have syndicate members or they're just, a lot of ours are owned 50-50. So it's Doug and I with another couple or, you know, another person. But basically that's a 50-50 split. So we put in half of, you know, basically half of the training and everything else, half the expenses, everything. It's like split down the middle. So then we get half of the prize money. So that is, I think we own like 12 of those, like half of 12 horses in our barn or something crazy like that. And then the other ones, like we have a Grand Prix horse that we own 0% of them, then we only get 10% of his prize money, but they pay all of the bills. So it kind of, it's per horse and per rider. I know there are some event people that they actually, I don't think it matters if they own a certain percentage of it. So ours is whatever percentage we own of the horse, we get that amount of prize money, if that makes sense. But there are other people that it's owned by a syndicate and everything else. It doesn't matter if the rider owns like 20% of the horse or whatever, no matter what, they get 50% of the prize money. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I mean, it's
a good deal, huh?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, and it's just what your people are comfortable with and what you agree upon. So you'll see everything from 50 to 10. And with most show jumpers that we've talked to about it is they take, a lot of the show jumpers don't own their own horses or don't have like a group or whatever, that they take 10% of it.
Okay.
Or whatever percentage they own, just like us. So, you know, we don't do a lot of syndicates. We actually don't have any syndicate horses. So ours are all based on everybody owns a certain, like, I think all but one of our horses we're 50-50 or we own 25% of one of the horses.
Interesting. Are there many riders out there who actually own their top level horse? I mean, that's pretty uncommon at that level, right?
It's uncommon, but there's quite a few than you wouldn't think. Like, I think they're kind of the one horse that they had and they got up the levels and they've owned it. So there are, I wouldn't say a number of them, but it's not also unheard of, I guess you should say. So like we own a couple of our babies, but mainly once they become, we're either going to sell them or, you know, we're going to actually go into a partnership with somebody. We kind of usually know by their 4 or 5 year old year. Sometimes they're 6-year-old.
Got it.
So I have a question too. And this goes back to like, you know, Jess, you said you have 50% of some and like 12% of others. What ends up being like the more profitable outcome? Because I know you said that like, you know, they pay for half the expenses and stuff like that.
For
like,
us,
I guess it depends on how much you show, right?
Well, no, it has to be a little bit of everything. Like we can't own 50% of everybody and we can't, we found a long time ago when Doug got the running order horse pulled that we've talked openly about. When that horse got pulled, we had sold another advanced horse and I retired my advanced horse all within I think it was like a 2-week period. So it went from 3 advanced horses in the barn to 0 within a week. At that moment, we decided to change our way of doing things and we wanted to own more and have a say-so of more. So we started kind of going about that we could own half of ours. But in that sense, we still have to have others pay all the expenses. So we can't own half of everybody, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And some of it's kind of nice for the people. They don't want us to own any of it and they want all of it. And the mixture is what is best for us, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If that makes sense. Like we weren't happy with the one way, so we changed it, but we could never have the financial ability to own 50% of everything in the barn.
Right. Yeah.
Like we have I'm very much a math person, so we have a definite number that we cannot go above basically, and we're pretty much at it. But no, I mean, like we've sold a couple, so like we're looking for, always looking for 1 or 2, but we can't go 10 more halves basically.
Yeah.
Interesting.
If that makes sense, like, and I'm always like, open about things. Like, I think somebody is like, you talked about money on the show. I'm like, yeah, why not? Like, who cares?
I think it's important. I think it's great that you're transparent because there's no way we're going to learn how this stuff works without someone being open about it.
No, exactly.
Interesting. So if you guys have a question,
I was going to say, please ask away. Do not feel that there's any kind of question you can't ask us. So please ask in our Facebook group.
Jess is an open book. She'll answer everything. So if you have a confidential
I feel like
question,
that was a loaded question that I'm going to get something for.
So you can always email us if you don't feel comfortable posting in the Facebook group at hello@heelsdownmedia.com. Or again, please join our Facebook group. It's the Heels Down Happy Hour Podcast Lounge. We share all kinds of fun stories and ask questions all day long in that group. So if you want to hear more from us, again, you should subscribe to the Heels Down Brief at bit.ly/hdbrief. And if you love our show, you should please leave us a review on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, or wherever you listen to this podcast. And we want to thank this week's partners, which is Smart Pack, Classic Equine by Richie, and EIS. And all right, guys, that's a wrap.
Cheers.
Cheers.